we are clarifying that our policy does not prevent communication with hostage takers by our government, the families of hostages, or third parties who help these families. No family of an American hostage has ever been prosecuted for paying a ransom for the return of their loved ones. The last thing that we should ever do is to add to families' pain with threats like that.
All right, that was the president earlier today announcing a brand new executive order clearing the way for Americans to make private ransom payments to terrorist organizations like ISIS abroad in order to free loved ones being held hostage without threat of prosecution. Is this the right decision? Here to respond is former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani. I'm only speaking for myself, and I don't often agree with Obama. If it was my son,
absolutely,
my daughter,
absolutely right,
no government's going to stop me if I can pay money to free them.
Right.
I understand. I think families ought to have the right to make their own decision.
Okay, but here's the problem, Sean.
It creates more hostage taking.
You got it. Right. So the problem is it creates more hostage situations. You're setting up a business now. Mm-hmm. What President Obama essentially did was he set up a business. I have done a lot of work, security work in Mexico and South America. Mexico has many more kidnappings than the United States. The U.S. has very few kidnappings. A lot richer people in America to kidnap.
Sure.
The reason is in the United States, we don't pay ransom. We turn it over to the FBI. They catch the person. And then, of course, we used to have the death penalty for it. Now it's life in prison. In Mexico, everybody pays. It's a business.
This is the problem with this, though, because I know you. I know you love your son and your daughter.
So,
on a personal level,
so here's what you do.
What would you do?
Here's what you do with this.
Yeah.
You have a rule and a law against it.
And let them do it.
Then in certain situations, you have plausible deniability. If, for example, if I were a prosecutor, right?
If you were the president, if you're a prosecutor and I did that, and I sat in your office and said I did it.
I would decline prosecution.
I would too.
But I think there's a value in having the rule. Look, President Reagan did this, not just President Obama. But in those days, you could do it with plausible deniability. You didn't have to have it as a rule. The minute you announce it as a rule, these people start thinking, I got a business here, and I can make a lot of money this way. And you know where that money's going. That money is going into
terror organizations.
Into terror organizations, some of which want to come back here and kill us.
Because all these other countries have allowed their citizens to negotiate with ISIS.
Right.
And they have paid huge sums of money, but they got their loved ones back. And we watch our loved ones getting beheaded and all of these instances where they're killed. And from my perspective, who am I to say you can't do that because you're encouraging future hostage taking?
It's a very
tough question.
It's a very hard thing. But I think the better way to deal with this, have a rule against it, and then if you're going to violate it, and let's all keep quiet about it. But if you get rid of that rule and you announce what the president just announced, ISIS, not just ISIS, Hezbollah, Hamas,
all of them,
the Houthis, all these groups now have a nice new way of making money, which is going to be more valuable than it was before.
Let me move on to presidential politics. I see Hillary as a weak candidate, somebody that can be defeated. And I see this whole issue with the Confederate flag. She's got a lot of questions to answer about her husband honoring that flag, about the Clinton-Gore button, about him playing golf at a golf club that did not allow black membership.
Right.
So I think she's got a problem. What are you looking for in a Republican nominee? Who are you looking at so far that may be inspiring you?
Well, I'm looking for, first of all, my major focus is national security, because that's really what the president runs, right?
Commander-in-chief.
That's his main job. That's where Congress has a role, but the least role. So I'm looking for a president that'll be like a Ronald Reagan to a Jimmy Carter. Ronald Reagan took over a dispirited country that thought it was moving in the wrong direction. He rebuilt our military. He made our military the greatest in the world. As Gorbachev says in his book, Ronald Reagan spent the Soviet Union into oblivion because they couldn't keep up with the huge military buildup that we were doing. For example, if we were building our Navy rather than reducing our Navy to pre-World War I levels, China would not be thinking about increasing its Navy to take over the South China Sea. This man in the White House...
Which they will do before he leaves office.
This man in the White House doesn't understand what I just said. I mean, I could say it, I can scream it, and he doesn't understand it. The best way to contain China and make it the peaceful rise of China is for us to have an enormously robust navy that is the greatest navy in the world, that can patrol 2 oceans, that can fight 2 or 3 wars, and China will not challenge us because the Chinese are practical. Putin maybe isn't as practical, but the Chinese are practical. Same thing in Europe. The minute Putin went into Crimea, what Obama should have done is send 50,000 troops to NATO. He didn't have to engage them. You send them. That puts the fear of God into people. I mean, we've got the greatest military in the world. They want to do these things, and he's holding them back. I have people in the military coming to me, special forces and whatever, telling me they should have let it, like some of these hostage situations. They will tell me they should use us for extractions. Our percentage rate of extracting people is extraordinarily high.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about any of them, the SEALs, the Rangers, the whole group.
Who's on Rudy Giuliani's radar in terms of...
Well, Jeb, for sure.
Yeah.
Marco Rubio. You know I like Senator Graham.
That's the only mistake.
Go
ahead.
Well, I like him very much.
Yeah.
I love George Pataki, and I wish he could get traction. I love George.
God, he's not going to win. You know he's not going to win.
Scott Walker, I'd like to know more about.
Yeah.
Rick Perry, I have a great fondness for, and what Rick Perry has, like Jeb Bush has, it'd be interesting to compare their 2 records as governor. Very close. Great economic development, low taxes, all the things we want domestically out of a president. And I think a much different candidate than he was 4 years ago. I
got a break. Mr. Mayor, good to see you. I think you'd be a great Secretary of Defense. Just my thought. I think that would work.